Did you know the FBI believes there are as many as 25 serial killers active at any given time? However, the Murder Accountability Project believes that number to be closer to 2,000. Welcome. I'm Jay.
I'm T.
We are Fatal Blend.
This is where we talk about two things we absolutely love. A little bit of coffee and a lot of true crime. Specifically, serial killers.
Well, here we are again. And this time, we're back from Tennessee. Not just back to the podcast, back after our vacation.
Yep.
And it was interesting, to say the least. Let's see what day one, just getting there after 4 hours of flying, another 3 hours driving. We get to the cabin, which we did not know was on the top of a mountain. And we had to traverse these roads that were wide enough for one car and an incline to where you could probably crawl it up on your hands and feet and feel like you're climbing a ladder. And it was wet and it was cold, and we had to back up down this treacherous road and make a run at it probably 3 or 4 times before burning the tires all the way up the road to get up to the cabin. So that was a great experience just to get to the house.
Yeah, it was it was terrible. It wasn't great. It was terrible. The trip itself was fine, but that was terrible.
And some people got out of the car because backing up and trying to drive up a hill was not fun.
No. It has nothing to do with the hill. It had to do with the fact that you were backing down a fucking mountain. And there was literally, you either hit the mountain or you go off the side of the mountain. People got out of the car because they wanted to help guide you so you didn't go off the mountain. There's a big difference.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, this road was wide enough for your car. So there wasn't a lot of room for error. And it was, what was it, 6, 7 o'clock at night? So it was just dark. And there's no street lights. There's no city lights because we're up in the mountains. It is dark. Right? We're out in the woods. And so not only did people get out to help guide, but then there was the fear of the animals and everything that's outside, especially when I took off in the car and had to keep going and left you and Sierra back where you got out at and had to come back and get you guys, which you guys walked most of it, but it was probably, I'd say, a good 3/4 to a mile walk uphill up the road. It was interesting. Luckily for us, we were able to swap out our car for a better car with the rental company. That would help us traverse the road a little bit better.
Shout out to Enterprise for being so cool.
Yep. And what's funny is when I called them, they were like, yeah, that happens quite often. If you're ever heading to Tennessee in the wintertime, 4-wheel drive.
If you don't listen to Crime Bitches, we talk about our trip on Crime Bitches as well. And so I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Sierra on Crime Bitches. Except for hers was just specifically for the crime museum. But out of the whole entire trip, what was your most favorite thing that we did?
I mean, I think there was a lot of cool stuff that happened. Seeing Gatlinburg was cool. Cool little town. Lots of little shops. The crime museum was, awesome to learn and to look and to see all that stuff that was there. Still a little confused why they called it Alcatraz East, but the crime part was really cool to read about it. And then being at Dollywood, it's no Disneyland, but
it's funny that those are the things, because like Sierra dogged on Dollywood.
I didn't think it was bad at all. I thought it was pretty cool. It's got more roller coasters that were pretty intense.
I dogged on Dollywood too because I said they need to be more fat friendly, but
I will second that, yes.
But we were talking specifically about Alcatraz East and our favorite parts of the museum, and I of course said the serial killer area.
And Sierra said when you tripped and hit your face.
Yeah. Sierra said it's
of
the
course
heist.
She did.
She told the whole story too.
So there was a thing called a heist at the end, and it was like a room with laser beams that went all across it, and one of the games you could play is break all the lasers, and then you and your partner would have to put your hands on the wall.
Because your only other option was to navigate through a fucking laser maze, and we are way too old.
So, and then you and your partner have to touch these pads on opposite sides of the room at the same time to get the lasers back and then run over and do it again. So, of course, we let the kids go first, and they set the bar, and then we needed to up the bar because there's no way we're going to let them beat us. So we go. And we're killing it so much. Yes, we beat them, and we made it on the top score list that is presented outside. But during this time, and let me mind you, there is a video camera inside, and the people outside can watch what you're doing on a TV. So they're seeing this. So we're running back and forth. We're killing it. We're getting tired because we're no young chickens anymore. And right during the last one, we touch the pads and go to run across, and T's feet didn't lift like they should have lifted, and what we call the forward stumble of death.
It's not that they wouldn't lift like they were supposed to. I tried to stop, and my leg said, "Not today."
Yeah, full speed. Tried to stop. It was like nope. So forward stumble of death.
Yeah, forward stumble.
Luckily, put her hands up and caught her face before it hit the wall. But all on camera, all for everybody to watch.
Yeah.
And did we get a recording? Video. Yes, we did.
That I do. So anyways, that's where we be at. We had a good holiday season. We had a good vacation. We definitely have plans to go back to Tennessee. I want to stay in Gatlinburg next time because we stayed in Pigeon Forge, and that was really cool. But Gatlinburg is really cool, and we didn't get to explore it as much. So
yeah,
we'll be heading back there at some point.
The weather wasn't the greatest. It was a little rainy.
I actually thought the weather was fairly good, except for the day we went to Dollywood.
Right, and that's where I was kind of going with it. It was like it was a little rainy and stuff, but it was dead. Like Dollywood was dead. To the point where there was thunder and lightning at one point, so a lot of the rides shut down.
Well, they always shut the rides down if it rains too much or whatever, which is the one thing I didn't like about Dollywood. But the overall vibe of Dollywood was cool. I'll say the same thing I said on Crime Bitches. I think Dollywood decorates their lights as far as Christmas goes better on their main street than Disneyland, but Disneyland hands down beats Dollywood on the rides.
Oh, for sure. And it depends on what you're looking for too. Dollywood had a lot of just base, like they had a lot of roller coasters.
No, it's not even that. It is really the fact that it's not tall or fat rider friendly.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because even our son, who's not fat, he's just tall, couldn't ride. Thick thighs, and he's tall.
He couldn't ride.
He couldn't ride a bunch of the rides.
So it's just I just feel like Disneyland is a lot more accommodating for everybody, and the overall vibe though, like it was fine. It was
there was a couple of the roller coasters where I got it clipped and shut, but it was like shallow breaths the whole time,
which is not fun for
trying to not push out too much.
Anyways, that's our trip.
So that was that. Now we're back here in the Pacific Northwest in the rain.
Yep.
Well, with it being a rainy Pacific Northwest weather, what are you drinking today? And we'll get into it.
So I broke down and I did something that I said I'd never fucking do. We bought a Nespresso and we got rid of our espresso machine. And so we've been drinking a lot of coffee, but I hate to admit it because I really love the Keurig. It's convenient. It's easy. It's cheaper than Nespresso by far, but Nespresso makes a bomb-ass coffee.
They definitely do a better cup of coffee.
They really do. Their coffee, it's creamy and it's delicious and it's flavorful. It's not bitter. So what I'm drinking now, I do use the Nespresso for espresso shots as well. So what I'm drinking is I'm actually drinking a coconut iced latte with coconut milk. And I made that with my new Nespresso and it tastes fucking delicious. And I hate myself for saying it.
Yeah, and some of their pods are flavored coffee.
Which don't taste like fucking flavored all. They taste like
flavored beans basically or whatever. It's not like,
It smells more like it does than it tastes.
You can't replace a caramel coffee with this stuff.
No.
But they have caramel and vanilla, and I like to throw that. So what I'm drinking is a caramel coffee pod.
Just, the caramel coffee.
My sugar-free French vanilla creamer.
Yeah.
It's creamy, sweet.
It's just, I don't know.
Not bad. It's not bad at all.
We kept the Keurig, we put it downstairs. So now when Jay's working, or like if I'm downstairs playing video games, or if we're having a game night, we have like a family room downstairs. And so we put the Keurig down there. So now we can do hot chocolates and coffees and all that stuff downstairs as well. But as far as our morning coffee, afternoon coffees, whatever, it's pretty dope. I mean, it's dope enough that I might even replace the Javi coffee that I've been using for my iced coffees. I might just switch it all to Nespresso, which I hate myself so much for saying.
Now, the biggest downfall of the Nespresso is the pods are not.
They're expensive.
Cheap.
Well, they're not. They're cheaper than if you buy
expensive.
A coffee.
Right, by far. But if you compare it to like the Keurig, they're definitely way more expensive than the Keurig.
So one of the things I actually had recommended is that we have like our first like good cup of coffee every like day, whatever, using Nespresso. But then if like Jay, if he's going to have like multiple cups throughout the day, then he needs to use the Keurig. I typically have like 1 cup of coffee and then most of the time like a latte later on in the day. So like for me, because I'm using the Nespresso pods, like I'll just do it that way. But if I were to have like 3 cups of coffee, I might have to just like dumb it down a bit, because the coffee pods are like $1.50 a piece, which still is cheaper than going to a store or going to like a coffee shop, but way more expensive than the Keurig. But the coffee's just way better. I don't understand. It's good. And I hate myself every day for that, because I was so anti Nespresso for a long time. Because everybody wants it because it's pretty and it's aesthetically pleasing, and I could give 2 shits about it. And then I taste it and I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah, some of the people I used to work with that were from Italy preferred that because they said it was closer to the coffee that they were used to than what you could get here. So
so anyways, that's what we'd be drinking today.
Yep. And we'd love to hear from you guys. So, put a message on this video, send us a DM. Send us a message. Tell us how you drink your coffee, what you use, how you make it. We love to hear it.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of listening and hearing, who are we going to listen to today?
This is going to be a little bit of an interesting one. I'm going to start it off before I do anything else to say a couple things. Number 1, I'm going to fuck up names. I'm going to fuck up locations. I'm going to fuck up sayings, because this is not in the United States. And number 2, I don't talk a lot about rape and stuff, but just please be aware that this episode surrounds brothels. Okay. We don't go into any like too big of detail. So if you are just really not into listening to anything that has to do with sexual nature, skip it. But that's all. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of these serial killers have that connected to them. We apologize, but we want to bring you guys the information that we have.
These are the stories, folks. Jay knows nothing about this case.
Nothing. She tells me little hints.
I didn't, because I want to get.
Will give me a little bit of the story.
So, I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, you might get some dams in this. We'll see.
We are going to call them the Gonzalez Valenzuela Sisters.
All right, we got sisters here.
That's when you look them up. It's actually, there's 4 of them. There's 4 of them, but 2 are considered the ringleaders. And so when you look up the sisters, it's typically the main sisters. But there are 4 of them. So we are going to talk about the 4 of them. We're going to just get into it. Okay, so the Gonzalez Sisters. Their nickname was, I'm pretty sure it's a derogatory term or somewhat derogatory, because the sisters hated being called this, but they were nicknamed Las Poquiantes,
which is considered a very hard word to pronounce in Spanish.
It's a very hard word to pronounce in English as well. Now, the dates of their murders were the 1950s to 1963. They have a total of 91 or more victims. Their location was San Francisco del Rincon in Guanajuato, Mexico. And the biggest characteristic, obviously, is that they ran a brothel. Do you notice how I didn't tell you how they were murdered?
Yes.
Because they don't fucking know.
Oh, damn.
There is no actual method of murder. I mean, they have suspicions, but, there's 91 plus people that they found dead. So I guess they wouldn't know how all of them were killed.
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into the background. The Gonzalez sisters are Delfina, Maria de Jesus, Maria del Carmen, and Maria Luisa. They were all born in Jalisco, Mexico. Now, Delfina was born in 1912. Maria del Carmen was born in 1918. Maria Luisa was born in 1920, and Maria de Jesus was born in 1924. They were born to Isidoro Torres and his wife, Bernardina Valenzuela. Now, Isidoro was a police officer, and he was a local police officer, and he was very strict on everything in his life, including how he raised his children. He was also very abusive. He did not allow his girls to talk to boys. He did not allow them to wear makeup. He did not allow them to wear any type of revealing clothes. And if his daughters did any of those things that he did not allow, he would lock them up in the county jail as punishment. By the way, it wasn't illegal. He was just an asshole. Now, their father was also a very power-hungry man. And so he would literally like ride through town and like, you know how, when people say like, oh, the sheriff's back in town, like that's what it kind of made me think of, is that he was somebody who was like very strict on the law, but he was so strict that his head was like 8 times too big for the fact that he would use the power of that he was a police officer in every aspect of his life. And he was like really overbearing on the people who lived there. Like he was a fucking dick to them too. So much so that he got into an argument with a man one day and he shot and killed him just for having this argument.
Wow.
Now, the shooting ends up causing the family to have like a shit ton of enemies. Like all these people are now pissed off. They do not like Isidoro. They basically hate his family because it's Isidoro's family. And it kind of forces them to move. They end up relocating to a smaller village. And where they ended up going was San Francisco del Rincon, which was called by the locals San Pancho. And this was in Guanajuato, Mexico. So they ended up moving to this really small town. They lived there in poverty. They lived in poverty in the other city too, but I think it was more so now because, again, they had to move. And I'm sure that he probably wasn't, I don't know what he was doing. There was nothing that said that he became a police officer in this new town. Like, I don't know. I think he might have been a police officer still. But apparently he wasn't getting paid a lot because they lived in poverty. And the girls, it was really hard for them to live in poverty. Like they struggled with the fact that they were super poor. So much so that they decided when they got into their young adult ages that they wanted a better life. They needed more money in their life. They're actually terrified of growing up and being poor. So they decide they're going to take the matters into their own hands, and they pool a bunch of money together and they buy and open a saloon. And the saloon is not successful at all, but it is successful enough to keep like food on the table, but they're not making money. They're literally surviving, which is exactly what they don't want. So while this is a great thing for them to kind of be doing because they can like, eat dinner every night, they decide we need something more. Like we need more money, or at least we want to make more money. And so they end up discovering that, well, if they sell their bodies for sex, they can make some more money. So,
and this was all in that city, Guanajuato?
Oh, yes. They turn to prostitution. They actually end up bribing local officials with sexual favors as well, so that they would just like stay out of their business and let them earn their money, because they realized that prostitution, there is some money to be made. Now, Delfina and Maria de Jesus, so the oldest and the youngest, they were actually the ringleaders on this venture, but the 4 sisters were all involved. So all 4 of them were involved in prostitution. But the youngest and the oldest sisters are the ones who are like, we can make some money here. So they eventually figure out, well, hold the fuck on. If we can do this, then why don't we buy out some buildings, build some brothels, and fucking have people come and pay us for sex? Not them, of course, but other people for sex.
Employees.
Yeah. So they actually end up opening and operating several brothels in the San Francisco del Rincon area. They also open brothels in Leon. They open in Purísima del Rincon, San Juan de los Lagos, El Salto, and San Juan del Rio and Jalisco. So they open brothels all over Mexico. Now, Delfina, Maria de Jesus, and Maria del Carmen, they actually maintain the brothels in Jalisco and wherever the fuck you said. Guanajuato. Okay, so that's where those 3 sisters, they literally they have a bunch of properties in those areas that are brothels. So those 3, that's what they maintain. And then Maria Luisa actually ran the brothel that was near the border of Mexico I don't know which city. It doesn't say, but it's one of them that was near the border. She stayed there.
I know it's not Leon.
I know. Leon's like in the middle of Mexico.
Yeah, it's in the middle. I've been there.
Yeah. So she ran that one. Now, the sisters also, because, brothels were bringing in the money. And so, but they also need more money. And so they also buy a bar in Lagos, Jaliscos. And the previous owner of the bar is actually one that gave them that nickname that they can't stand. Now, the sisters would go on and they would go out and they would find very young, very pretty girls and they would recruit them to work in their brothels. And they would tell the girls like, hey, we have a job at I don't even know if they told them they were brothels. I think they just like told them like that they were like, well, maybe they did say it was a brothel, but they would tell them like, hey, we're hiring, we need maids and we need waitresses. And the girls were like so much trying to better themselves. And they like had this dream of being, well, just like the fucking Gonzalez sisters, they wanted to be able
more than just poor.
Right. And so these girls would be like, absolutely. Like, yep, I'll come do it. And even some of the girls, because they were young, some of them were very young, like 12, 13 years old. Their parents would be like, absolutely, yes. They would consent. So they would tell the parents, like, listen, if she comes and lives here, she'll have a room and then she works for us and she'll be a housemaid or she'll be a waitress and she'll bring home wages and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, yeah. Sounds good. I feel like after doing all these researches, I realized people need to just keep their kids close. Justin Bieber's mom should have kept him close. These people should have kept their kids close. Don't let your kids go with adults. Just don't. Anyways, so they ended up going. Now, there were also reports, though, that in some cases, Delfina, and she had a boyfriend, they would actually kidnap girls. Maybe I'm assuming girls who refused, like who they met with, and then they were like, no. Well, they'd kidnap them anyways. So it didn't matter. They couldn't say no, basically. Now, once the girls would show up at the brothels for the job of being a housemaid or a waitress, mind you, they were immediately put to work as prostitutes. Now, they would force feed them heroin or cocaine. And the initial contact the girls would have would be they were raped and then they were given an ice water shower. I feel like it's a mind control tactic at that point, right? Like you force feed them drugs, you rape them, you shower them in the cold so they're freezing. And now it's like you've beaten them down to where they're not going to run. They're scared now. So now they're just fucking there. So it's a mind control thing. Now, before they did any of this, they would pick through the girls. And if there were any girls that were virgins, they would actually save those girls. They wouldn't do any of that to those girls because those girls would go to the wealthiest paying clients.
Premium.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They were the premium client for premium clients. Now, the girls were never allowed to go outside. If they needed to buy clothing or supplies or hygiene materials, they could only buy them from the sisters. They were never allowed to leave the property. They were never allowed to leave the fucking rooms they were locked into. So the sisters were their only point of contact. And the sisters also had very strict rules for their brothels.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, you're running an illegal brothel and you have rules? Like,
so
come on.
Here's their rules. Some of them. The most important ones. No kissing. The clients and the girls were not allowed to kiss. There was to be no sexual acts between two girls or any girls, and no anal sex. And any client who requested these were immediately banned from the brothels, although some now say that they were actually killed for requesting it and buried.
So it's like these sisters are forcing these girls into doing stuff, but they're like, you're going to respect the girl.
Absolutely. It's fucking weird. Now, if the girls broke the rules, so if the girls kissed somebody, if the girls engaged in sexual acts they weren't supposed to, they were severely punished. Some of them would be punished by kneeling on the ground and holding bricks. And they have pictures of, if you look it up online or whatever, if you look up Delfina and Maria de Jesus Gonzalez, you will actually see after everything comes out or whatever, they go to trial and whatever. Well, they have girls who worked in the brothels coming forward and they're demonstrating what they're doing. So they have like a picture of these two girls they're on their knees and they have bricks in each hand and they have to hold them like up in the air. And that's their punishment. They also, some were beaten with a nail studded bat, which all I thought of.
The Walking Dead, the worst.
That's
part of that.
What is it, Lucille?
Show.
All I thought of was, fuck, they're like the original owners of Lucille?
Yep.
Like, what? And some of them would just be starved. That was it. So if they broke the rules, something like this was happening to them. Which again, fucking mind control, right? If you know you're not supposed to do something and these are the punishments, you're just going to fall in line. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, everything has consequences.
Exactly.
But the consequences were extreme.
Yeah. And what, yeah. Many of the times, these girls would actually be sold to law enforcement officers, military personnel, politicians, and local villagers. So it's not like they were like these women.
Well, that's why they weren't getting shut down.
Right. These women could have been saved at any time, especially by local law enforcement who knew what was going on and actually engaged in these sexual acts with them. And they didn't, obviously, because they're
Well, yeah, because then they wouldn't be able to engage in the sexual acts.
Right. Now, if a girl were to become pregnant, as one fucking would in a brothel, they were beaten until they lost the baby. So there's that. They weren't allowed to have babies either.
Like, how are you going to avoid that?
You don't. But then they just beat the shit out of you, basically, until your baby dies. Or probably worse. I say that because just hold on to your butt cheeks, pal. So if a girl is sick, like if she's sick or if she's like, I don't know, just got beaten to kill her baby and she's like not doing well, the other girls were forced to beat her with sticks and logs, which sometimes would kill them. But the other girls, so the sisters wouldn't do it. They would force the other girls to do it. So in 1948, they actually closed and moved one of their brothels to San Juan de los Lagos. And the reason they had closed it and moved it is because wherever they were located, they started to have stricter laws that were being enforced in that area. And so they were like, let's cut it and go. So they named this new brothel El Guadalajara de la Noche. So they actually like these like fancy names and shit for them, whatever. Once the girls would reach the age of 25, the sisters would send the girls away to a verdugo. And this is a man who tortured. That's where they would send them. He would beat them and starve them until they died. Just because they reached the age of 25. Because they weren't young anymore. They didn't look young anymore.
They aged out.
Now, the sisters would also set up and murder their wealthy clients. They would rob their wealthy clients as well. But most of the time, if it was somebody who was like really high paying, they would like allow them to. Okay, so they save virgins for the really high paying clients. They would sell it. They would sell the girl. Once it was done, then they'd go and fucking murder the guy anyways. So I don't understand why we didn't just murder men or women, but I don't understand why we didn't just pretend like we had a brothel and then just murder the guys when they showed up. Like, whatever. So in 1963, Delfina's son was shot and killed by the police. Now, don't go feeling bad for Delfina's son because Delfina's son helped in controlling and torturing the women all the time.
It's a family business. You got to keep it going for the next generation.
Right. So what happens? Well, Delfina, of course, orders a hit on the police who had killed her son. And so she hires a man named Hermenegildo Zuniga. And she hires him and she's like, you need to go kill these men because they killed they killed my son. And so he did as he was told. And he did actually end up killing the officers. Any officer who had anything to do with her son's death was murdered by him. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power.
That is a lot of power.
So then in January of 1964, a woman named Catalina Ortega escapes from Loma del Angel. Now, she ends up crawling through this really small opening that was in the wall, and she runs like as fast as she can. And they discover that she's missing. And so, of course, Delfina's like, go fucking find her. And I want her dead. Like, that's it. Well, they don't find her fast enough because she ends up getting to her mom's house. Her mom lives in León, Mexico. And so she gets to her mom's house and she's, emaciated as fuck, bruised, whatever. And she tells her mom what happened. And her mom immediately brings her to the police station in León. Now, the problem with this whole scenario is
they've got people.
A lot of the people in all of these towns, a lot of the police force is, first of all, has firsthand knowledge of what's going on. And second of all, wouldn't have done anything to put a stop to it. However, they happened to find a police officer that was not
like the one good cop.
Yeah, that was not on Delfina's like payroll or whatever, right? So on January 14th, 1964, after listening to everything that she says, they decide to obtain a search warrant, and they end up raiding the Loma del Angel brothel because, again, this girl escapes from there, and she's like, you don't understand. Like, this is not like a, what do you call, what is the bunny ranch or whatever?
Yeah, the bunny ranch.
This is not like a fucking bunny ranch, bro.
This is bad.
We're held against our will. We aren't allowed to leave the house. We're not allowed to go outside. We have to do whatever they tell us to. They keep us drugged. We're beaten. People have died. Like, we need, I need help. So they get a search warrant and they raid. So they don't even they don't warn anybody. They just show up and they fucking. Now, while they're there, they find Delfina. They find Maria de Jesus. They're kind of like, let's see what's going on. There's actually pictures. There's actually pictures of one of the sisters. I think it was Maria de Jesus. There's pictures of her sitting on the ground watching them as they're raiding this property, right?
Thinking, shit.
So they find dozens of young women that are dirty, beaten, malnourished, and they're all locked in rooms on this property. So they rescue these girls, and as soon as they rescue them, the girls are like, there are dead bodies all over this place. And they start pointing to the officers where to dig. Like, dig, you will find bones. So they do. They actually made one of the people who helped dispose of, people dig for them. Because all these people, so they actually arrest Delfina. They arrest Maria de Jesus, plus all the other men that were working there. They arrest them all. But then the girls are like, no, there's dead bodies. So they have one of the guys, he starts digging, and they start digging up bones. So they arrest him. And then after this happens, they decide, okay, hold on, there's more of these brothels. So they find Maria del Carmen at her brothel. They arrest her, they shut down her brothel, and they get a warrant to search her property. Over the next few weeks, they actually dig up areas of all the brothel properties. And there is one ranch in Leon. So the brothel that the girl escaped from.
Right.
That was in Leon. So that specific one is where they found most of the bodies. I am not sure because when I was reading it kind of sounded like originally the Leon property was never a brothel, but it became a brothel because they had to move a bunch of girls there. It sounded
so maybe that was where these girls got taken and tortured.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So they end up finding a total of 91 bodies. They find men, women, and fetuses. And by the way, the fetuses are not counted in the 91. So they find...
That is a lot.
Yeah, they find a bunch of men, a bunch of women. And then they find is that a lot of the times the babies... the fetuses are the reason they know it is, they weren't full babies, right? So they would be when somebody was beaten and they have a miscarriage, if their baby had already started to have bones, that's what they were finding. Now, the town is fucking angry as hell. They are pissed
burn them at the stake.
So there's mobs of people that are threatening to kill them. They stand outside of the courthouse. They want them hanged instantaneously. We don't even give a fuck about a trial. They did this, fucking kill them. So a judge ends up actually sending them to Irapuato City Jail, which is in a completely different city because he's like, this shouldn't right. And the three girls faced charges. They were accused of practicing Satanism by forcing women to practice sexual acts on animals. So these are things that they're being charged with now. They had accusations of bribing local authorities, which, by the way, I hope those local authorities got arrested too.
Hell yeah. And the cops and the governors and whoever else was involved.
Mm-hmm. And they were accused of manipulating basically the girls to torture other girls and clients to kill them when they were told to. So they, these are the things that they got in trouble for. Interestingly enough, if you think about it, it does kind of sound like Delfina, Maria de Jesus, and Maria del Carmen never actually murdered anybody. It kind of sounds like they're Mansons, right? And I'm not saying that as any weird trickery. Literally, as I'm reading this to you, I realized that they never got charged with murder. They never got charged with murder. They got charged of making people murder. They got charged with bribing people, but they never actually got charged with murdering people.
Yeah, because they probably didn't get their hands dirty. They just paid other people to do it.
Delfina, Maria de Jesus, and Maria del Carmen are all eventually sentenced to 40 years in prison. So when this happens, Delfina's 52 years old. So 40 years for her, she'd be 92 when she gets out. Maria de Jesus is 40, so she'd be 80. And Maria del Carmen is 46, so she'd be 46 or 86 when she gets out.
Still not long enough for 91 bodies.
Now, do you notice how it's just 3 of them?
Right. Where's everybody else?
So where's Maria Luisa, you ask?
Sure.
Oh, well, she was, because again, remember, she was in totally different brothels, right?
She's like, I didn't know about any of
When she found out, right, when she finds out that, oh shit, all the brothels are getting taken, she like disappears for a hot minute. And then all of a sudden she's like, nah. She ends up turning herself in because she was afraid of what the local mob was going to do, because she was afraid they would find her and lynch her. That was what she told them.
Probably right.
And she actually went absolutely mad. She went insane. She went crazy. So she didn't even like face trial. Like she
was already crazy.
Obviously. But I mean, she went into the officers and was like terrified. And then with that fear, she fucking went completely insane. So she didn't go to like jail. I think she went to like a psychiatric institute. Yeah. So she that's all I know about her. I don't know if she lives, dies. I have no idea. I mean, my guess is she was older than Maria de Jesus, who again, she was 40 when she went there. So she was like 44 years old. So even if she would have gotten 40 years in prison like her sisters, she would have been 84 damn years old. Like none of these chicks are living into their 80s, to be honest with you. Especially if you see pictures of them. They definitely look like 50s. Actually, I thought they were like 60s or 70s in their pictures. So when I found out they were 40 and 50, I was shocked.
That crime life does it to you.
I don't know. Some updates on these lovely women. Delfina ends up dying in prison during a freak accident. They say freak accident, but just hear this accident and then you'll be like, So there was construction going on in the prison that she worked at, or that she was in, and they were actually working on the cell above her cell. And a construction worker that was working on it wanted to see the infamous Delfina Gonzalez. So he kept like leaning over. And when he did that, he accidentally dropped a bucket of cement on her head.
Right.
And she died on October 7th, 1968. So she was only in prison for like 4 years.
No, that was a hit.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, how, what? So that she dies. Maria del Carmen also dies in prison. She dies of cancer. Maria Luisa went completely mad, and it stayed that way. So she got put away, like locked away for life in an institute. And Maria de Jesus served her full sentence and was released, and no one ever heard from her again.
Wow.
So she was released when she was 80 years old. Like, I mean, to be fair, she could go back to being a brothel woman. Yep. I don't know. So anyways, that is the story of the Gonzalez sisters. Who would you like to hear the like few shots that I have?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Delfina's son, remember how her son was shot?
Yep.
Okay, so of course he was shot and killed. However, what's interesting is he was shot and killed inside one of the brothels. Yeah. So police officers were frequenting the brothel. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think one of the brothels had like a bar attached to it. So I think that's actually where it was at. However, this incident led to that specific brothel being shut down. And Maria de Jesus was arrested along with all of the girls that were in the brothel. Remember, that was in 1963.
Yeah. Now,
the story goes, I don't know if this is true, but this is what the story goes. The story goes that the girls and Maria de Jesus end up escaping, and they end up forcing the girls to stay in like a safe house type thing for 8 months. And it was like extremely harsh conditions. And this actually caused many of the girls to die from starvation and sickness from this brothel that was shut down. What blows my mind is the fact that y'all shut that bitch down and didn't think to look at the rest of the brothels.
Right.
Right? Like they started to investigate the brothel that her son was killed in.
Like, but then they just shady shit going on here, but maybe it's the only one.
Right.
But also you've got people in the law enforcement and in government probably helping steer.
Well, yeah, of course. Of course. Now, it was also stated that over 2,000 girls passed through the brothels during that like 13-year period that they had them. And most of the girls that went through there were actually sold to other brothels. And they were sold for $80 per girl. So they would kidnap and promise and do all these things to get these girls to their brothels, but they didn't keep them all. They'd basically beat them up, rape them, torture them for a hot minute, and then sell them to another brothel for $80, which I guess in the fucking 60s is decent money, but yeah. Damn. Now, one girl stated, okay, because again, remember, they had like a trial, they had witnesses, and the girls who were at the brothels were most of them were very forthcoming with information because they finally had been saved, right? So this girl says, when a girl would get sick from not being given enough food and being beaten so badly, she would be taken from the room where we were locked up and we would never see her again. We were told that she was taken to the hospital, but she died. She was killed.
Yeah.
This girl was 14 years old. So that means that she was at least 14 years old in the brothel. Now, it has been estimated that the sisters killed as many as 150 people. And some even believe that the number is actually over 200 if you include babies.
Man, that's crazy.
Now, again, I don't think the sisters killed a single person. I think they had people that did it for them, but they not manipulated. They were the ringleaders. They were the ones who made those decisions.
Man, you got these people who are torturing and killing the women once they hit 25. Like, what type of person are you?
Right. Especially because you look like an old, haggard 80-year-old woman and you're 40 years old.
Right.
Like, damn, bitch. And then the final shot. When the sisters were asked for the explanation for the deaths of the people on their brothels, their response was, the food didn't sit well with them.
So, don't eat the food from sisters.
Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck?
Maybe that was a thing back then. Like, oh, stomach ache, dead.
Well, no, my thought is I'm assuming that most of these girls died from starvation because they would starve them. So my guess is that was their excuses. Oh, they didn't like the food, so they starved to
because
death.
of all the people they had in their pocket, too. They probably just didn't give a shit.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And they probably thought when they were arrested the whole time, they were probably thinking they were going to get off.
I don't know, man. I would think maybe because when you look at some of the pictures, they look pretty lax, to be honest with you, when this is all going down. But I think when they got sentenced, they were upset. I think they were crying or something. That is the story of the Gonzalez sisters. And I don't know, you got anything you want to say about it? Or are we done?
Yeah, I mean, you got 3 sisters killing people, running these businesses.
Four sisters.
Running this business to make more money, and it's probably very few that you're going to hear or see where it's sisters that do this.
4, I know. So when I first picked this, like, again, for all of you who know and have been listening for a while, I have serial killer encyclopedias, 2 of them, and I randomly pick. Well, when I randomly picked, it is actually the serial killers that are defined in the book are Delfina and Maria de Jesus Gonzalez. So when I first was like going to look into it, I thought it was 2 girls, 2 sisters. But when I dug into it, I was like, oh shit, it's 4. But the thing is, Delfina and Maria de Jesus are the ones who saved the money to start to buy the brothels. They are the ones who expanded the brothels. They are the ones who kind of controlled everything. And they are the ones that when you see pictures, it's them on all fronts of it. So,
and it's interesting too, because back then there wasn't a ton of opportunities for women
right.
to be in that role. So to have them, the queen pins basically, without somebody above them pulling the trigger,
they were badass.
Was interesting.
I mean, I'm not going to give them badass. They weren't badass. They were bad apples. The thing is, they had a shit childhood and they didn't want to be, in poverty or whatever. Whatever. You want to run a brothel, ma'am, run a brothel, but we don't need to be killing people.
You're going to be ruining other people's childhoods because you had a shit one.
And you know what? You know what? There was probably plenty of women that would have been willing to
but not
work
that young.
In a brothel. No, but work in a brothel.
People are going to pay more money for young because they're disgusting.
But I'm just saying, like, you did it so terribly. There are people out there who, they don't mind being sex workers. Find those people, and we don't need to be killing nobody. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, ma'am. Like, ma'am.
Yeah, but if they just, you're 25-year-old, we're going to let you go.
Well, exactly. What are you going to do with them? Yeah. You got to kill them, right?
And cougars weren't a thing back then.
Well,
so
but
now
I was
going to
say some
you
people
could keep them all the way until they're 70.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the story of the sisters that I actually totally enjoyed learning about because I've been waiting to do. There's families. There are families. I actually have a book about the Bloody Bender family, which I won't be doing Bloody Benders until I've read that whole entire book because it's a family of serial killers, and that's the most fascinating shit to me. But Four Sisters was great. I mean, I was totally fine with it. So
definitely not what I expected for this episode.
No, and I was glad I didn't share it with you because I just wanted it to be a surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah. So anyways.
And with that.
Follow us on all of our socials. You know the drill. Fatal Blend.
Don't forget to tell us how you take your coffee.
Yeah. Reach out. Let us know.
We love hearing about it so we can try new things as well.
Yes, sir. And ma'am. Anyways.
All
okay.
right.
Well, this is the part where I think I'm going to say goodbye.
And I'll be right behind you with the old bye-bye.